everything. If you just tuned in for the first time, don't sweat it. You're in the right place at the right time with a front row seat to the revolution. We are super passionate about you having your WTF moment. It's the moment you take action to accumulate wealth, gain control of your time while achieving true freedom. Now, velocity banking is our secret weapon against debt. It's a savvy strategy where we use debt tools to outsmart interest and free yourself from the debt trap fast. But tonight, we're not just playing catch up. We're catapulting forward. We're expanding on that concept and showing you how to morph those debt-busting moves into wealth-building mastery by flipping the velocity banking concept into a supercharged wealth strategy. But is this for everyone? No. But if you don't have time to waste, or you don't plan on wasting time, then this is for you. Whether you caught part one or you're just joining us fresh, this session is your on-ramp to financial freedom. What you'll learn tonight is why reversing your financial focus from just eliminating debt to actively growing wealth is such a game changer. If we've never met before, then welcome to the party. And to our returning self-directed fam, let's go. Line it up in the chat with us. Now, you might be watching this alone, but we're all in this together. And by the end of tonight, you'll see how close or far your freedom number really is. And we'll take you through an exercise to discover what you can do about it. So grab your notebook. Tonight, you'll need it. So get ready for a fire hose of information. Get set to be financially future-proof. And let's go. You're about to get self-directed with the Stidhams. Oh, hey, remember reverse velocity banking? Grab that term and pin it to your vision board because it's about to change everything. If you just tuned in because it was so awesome, what do you guys think of our trailer / custom intros for the streams? Are you digging it? Do you love it? Of course, you know, we think it's cool, but I'm a creative person, so I like to create things. And if you think that it's better than our regular intro, make it shorter, make it more about the topic. You know, is that a thing? Should we keep doing it? Welcome, by the way. And for anyone who's just joining us, please jump in the chat. Tell us where you're tuning in from and join the fam. Tonight, we're going to talk about we're going into part 2 of reverse velocity banking. We already covered kind of a case study of using this. And so tonight is really more about you finding your numbers and being able to implement this for yourself. So that's what we're going to get into.
So, you know, me, I'm a fan of the pyrotechnics. So the more stuff we blow up, the more I like it.
Well,
But yeah, so the idea today is kind of just quickly go back over what we discussed on Sunday so that we can get everyone caught up. But really the moral of the story is to identify or answer any questions we might have as it relates, and then kind of highlight how you can do the same. And really my goal here is really about the strategy. It's less about the math even. It's really more about the strategy, meaning we are so used to doing things a certain way. We are so used to paying, our income coming in, our bills being paid, our monthly payments being addressed, and whatever's left over, we do what we need to do with whatever's left over. Some of us get it compounding, some of us throw it into savings, some of us spend it. But the idea behind this strategy is, what if we simply were able to take our leverage dollars to pay our bills and put our income towards creating more employees for us, getting our money working, compounding our money. So that's really, it's really more about the strategy, because this is not a one size fits all. This is very unique and it's specific to the individual. Your freedom number looks different from my freedom number, and your process of getting there looks different from my process for getting there. So it's really more about the strategy. If you can grasp the strategy, you're onto it.
yeah. But for those who are familiar with the velocity banking concept, right? I don't know that we planned on going over that tonight. So I would just want to make sure that we do like a quick recap of what the process is. If I don't know if you're set up to do that, but okay. All right, cool. Because what we did was we took the traditional velocity banking structure, right? And we flipped it. And that's what we did. We completely took that strategy and we're leveraging the cash flow element of that, right? That's the most powerful part of it. The more cash flow that you have, the faster the strategy can work for you. And instead of that being the case, you having this portion, like you were saying before, now we're going to use your income your income becomes that motivating and accelerating tool. And
Right.
so that's what we're going to get into. Are you ready to jump in?
Yeah, we can. And just so you know, you're a little low, so I don't know if you need to turn yourself up, and I don't know if
Okay.
I am a little low as well. So there may be some opportunity there. Not sure.
Okay. Am I better now?
Do it again.
Am I better now? Am I too loud?
No, you're not too loud, but you're about the same for me.
Okay. Well, I did turn up.
Okay, perfect. Turn up then.
But that's not unusual for me. Okay. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Oh,
No, that's
other side.
calculator. Yeah, because I was like, we know what we know what it sounds like.
Where would I be without Boys to Men? So just really quick. Last week or Sunday, we talked about doing a reverse velocity banking concept or strategy. And we use a gentleman by the name of Abel, 25 years of age, makes about $50,000 a year, and he's putting away about 10% of his income. 10% of 50,000 is $5,000 a year. And the idea is he wants his freedom number. And so the concept was, instead of going the traditional means of calculating or finding that freedom number, is there a better way? Is there a different way? Hence, we kind of coined it as reverse velocity banking. So to kind of just quickly highlight what that looks like, I think the best thing to do is probably to start here. It's kind of hard to talk about reverse velocity banking until we talk about what velocity banking is in general. And so, what is velocity banking? Here, I'll do it this way. I'll get rid of this stuff.
Well, what is it? Here we go.
So what is velocity banking? And again, there are many channels that cover this. We cover it from time to time, mainly because it's a strategy that I understand. It's a strategy that kind of we use to help jumpstart where we were headed. But the bottom line is your income comes in. And when that income comes in, where does it normally go? It goes into your checking account. And when that income goes into your checking account, you traditionally pay bills from there. And then whatever's left over, you end up throwing it into savings or spending it or whatever the case may be. But from a velocity banking perspective, it's a little bit different. Income goes into your checking account and immediately goes on to a debt tool. That debt tool can be anything from a credit card, a line of credit, home equity line of credit, business line of credit, personal line of credit. There are many different debt tools you can use, but the thought process is this. You're going to use this debt tool to then pay your bills from there. And when you do that, what that allows you to do is it allows you to kind of get multiple uses out of a dollar. High level, if I make 5,000 and my bills are 4,000, as I put all of my income onto that debt tool, and let's say it's a credit card that's maxed out at $10,000. When I put all of my income, the $5,000 onto that debt tool, it brings the balance down from 10,000 to 5. But then when I pay bills from that debt tool, the cash flow, that $1,000 that's left over lives on the debt tool, and it's that cash flow that ends up breaking down or knocking down the balance on this tool, which allows me to then have a weapon that I can use to go attack more debt. And then the idea is this cash flow, as I mentioned, lives here. Well, the reason that's so important as it relates to the clients that I work with, and that is when you free up that cash flow, unless you put that money to work, you can put yourself in a situation where you can cause things to end up back where they were. Meaning, if you don't put that money to work, what else are you going to do with it other than spend it? And so the thought process is, then what? What do you do with that cash flow once it's freed up? And the concept that we like to do is we take that debt tool or the income, the cash flow coming from that debt tool, and we move it to some type of wealth generating tool. Ultimately, we get it compounding. And so there's many ways of going about it, but we talk a lot about a secure compound interest account in the form of premium finance strategy, also known as MPI. So it's getting that cash flow into a vehicle where it can actually start working for you. Well, as we talk about reverse velocity banking, how is that any different? Well, again, from a velocity banking perspective, it's taking the cash flow from the debt tool and moving that to a wealth generating tool, putting that money to work. Well, the concept here is kind of going the opposite direction. It's putting your money first onto the wealth tool and then leveraging the income from that wealth tool. So again, So as your money still comes into your checking account as normal, you're placing that income into your wealth generating tool, some type of secure compound interest account. And then as that cash value continues to grow, you then transition that cash value into a position where that can pay your bills. Well, why is that important? Well, if you're using leveraged money to pay your bills, 9 times out of 10, you're using tax-free dollars tax-free dollars, leverage dollars is the word I was trying to find, leverage dollars to be able to pay your bills, and your cash, the money that you are growing inside of this vehicle, is continuing to work for you, which ultimately will translate into a lifetime of income. So in essence, we're taking a wealth tool and transitioning that income from that wealth tool, leveraging the income in the wealth tool to then pay your bills. And that's high level what that looks like. But I also wanted to dig into a little bit of the details of as to where this concept is coming from and why it's even an option. And I know I'm moving super fast because I know we have a lot to cover in a short time, but I wanted to start here as well, or just highlight this as well. And I'll make this a little bit bigger as I go over it. But traditionally, Abel, the gentleman that we were doing this example on, he's making about $50,000 a year, and he would pay his bills, pay his debts, and then whatever's left over is what he decided to get compounding. And so in the thought process was, okay, this is how most of us address our savings or anything that we're putting away to be able to produce income for us, with the exception of our company's 401k. A company's 401k is one of the few or traditional retirement plans are one of the few vehicles that we tend to pay ourselves first with, meaning we take in before that income comes to us, that income goes into that vehicle and starts building wealth for us. Well, the thought process is, what if we could do that outside of a traditional retirement vehicle? But traditionally, this is what happens. We take our cash flow, and then whatever's left over, that dollar amount that we're deciding to put away to build for us, is what we end up using inside of our wealth building vehicle. So moral of the story is, the pay ourselves first isn't really paying ourselves first. We end up paying our bills and our debts first, and then whatever's left over is what we use to then get our wealth building started. But what if we just looked at this from a different perspective? What if we took a different approach? And that approach being, what if you could put all of your income into the wealth building tool? And obviously you have to build up the enough cash flow to be able to get there. That is not something you can just start off, right off the bat doing. It's something you have to build up to. So what if you could take all of the income that you have? In this case, Abel makes $50,000 a year. Take all $50,000, put it into that wealth building vehicle. And as cash flow builds inside this vehicle, then those bills that you have to pay, mortgage, debt, anything related to life in general, those bills end up getting paid by the leverage dollars. And this, just so we're clear, this isn't a new concept. This isn't something that we magically came up with, or something that we are experimenting with. If you were to just simply go to Google and put into the search bar, how does Warren Buffett pay less taxes than his secretary? Or a better one would be, how do rich people pay less taxes? Like, what are the steps that rich people pay to pay less taxes? And what will come up is right here. It's right on the first page. According to buy, borrow, and die strategy, leveraging assets as collateral allows you to borrow money while preserving the value of the underlying asset. What that's basically saying is, rich people don't spend their cash. They spend the leverage. So they use their cash and they place it into an asset that's actually building wealth for them. And then they leverage that asset, meaning they borrow against that. And that's what they use to buy, and that's what they spend with. So why couldn't you do the same? Why couldn't you have your own asset that's building wealth over time, and then you leverage that asset to be able to pay your expenses? Like, this is not foreign. It's just something that we've been conditioned not to do. We've been conditioned to spend our money as it comes, and then whatever's left over, we put that in a position to hopefully work for us to produce our retirement, or whatever the case may be. What if we just reversed it? What if we do what the wealthy have already been doing? And that's the thought process for today. Again, it's about the strategy. It's the strategy of simply looking at this from a different perspective and leverage and using your cash to fund an asset and then leveraging the growth of that asset to actually pay your bills. And again, just to kind of reiterate the performance of what this looks like, it's a wealth strategy compared to an investment strategy. Meaning the vehicle that we're talking about is a vehicle that we can maybe not eliminate the risk, but at least reduce the risk. Because if we can reduce the risk, we can actually build wealth and build uninterrupted compound interest versus every other strategy we are indoctrinated with. Whether it's your 401k, an IRA, a 403b, a TSP, real estate, you name it, there's some form of risk there, and that performance of up and down performance in the stock market, that average of those wins and losses, that straight line of performance is the reason why everyone ends up poor. But the objective is if we can reduce the risk, and that's where a secure compound interest account comes into play. If we can reduce the risk, we can put ourselves in position to where we can actually build enough wealth to be able to use that leverage to pay our bills. So again, conceptually, that's what that looks like. And so, and just to go over where we ended, we kind of started here. We started here with Abel putting away making $50,000 a year, putting away 10% of his income, which is $5,000 into a secure compound interest producing vehicle. And we let that compound for the next 10 years. Well, in the process of letting that compound for the next 10 years, there was a few things that we came up with. One was at that 10-year mark, inside of that secure compound interest producing vehicle that he was putting away $5,000 a year, he had achieved cash value of right around $73,000. That remaining 45, what did we do with it? That remaining 45 at year 10, that remaining 45, we split up that remaining 45 and got it compounding. Meaning we truly paid ourselves first. We first took our 50,000 and got it into a secure we paid the 5,000 that we had started 10 years ago. And then we took the remaining 45,000 and also put it to work. So it took us 10 years to get to a point where we could honestly pay ourselves first. Until then, up until that 10-year mark, we were doing what he was always doing what most of us do. Income would come in. We would pay bills from that income, and that remaining, what was left over, we were getting it compounding in a secure compound interest producing vehicle. So it took us 10 years to get to a point where we could actually step back and assess whether or not we could actually start paying ourselves first officially. And that's kind of what this point is at year 10, age 35, taking this $50,000 of income, getting $5,000 into a secure compound producing vehicle, and then splitting the rest into another, and then leveraging the cash value that was accumulated in that secure compound interest producing vehicle to pay our bills. And what was our bills? $45,000. So we're going to borrow $45,000 from the cash value that's been accumulated in this vehicle to pay our bills in year 10. And once those bills are paid, we now have the remaining income to get to work. But when we borrowed this $45,000, it was not borrowed for free. It was borrowed at 4%. So that cost of borrowing has to be addressed. And that's what this is. All I'm saying here is the $50,000 that's caught up in this cash value is not moving. It didn't go anywhere. It's still here. That $50,000 is still growing at some rate. And it's growing on average around 7%, which is about $3,500. This $4,500 that I had taken out, $45,000 that I had taken out to pay bills throughout that year, there was a cost to that $45,000. That cost is 4%. 4% of $45,000 is $1,800. $3,500 on the money that I've grown inside of this secure compound interest account, minus the $1,800 that it cost me to leverage this 45, leaves me a net interest earned of about $1,700. And I'm making a lot of assumptions here. I'm assuming that this net of $1,700 of performance is, I have an average growth of 7%. That average growth is including any down, I'll call it down markets that might happen. So there's a lot of assumptions being made here. But my point is this, that net average or the net interest earned in this first year is carried throughout the next 10 years. And throughout the next 10 years, I'm accumulating interest and I'm accumulating leverage throughout that 10-year period. Meaning if I'm borrowing $45,000 a year, someone's going to have to pay that $45,000 back. So that's what kind of moved us to here. And so at the end of the 20-year period, so in the first 10 years, we were leveraging in the first 10 years, we were leveraging 45,000 from the secure compound interest account that we created. But at year 20, we opened up at year 10, we also opened up a second secure compound interest account. And so we had our first one that was performing, and then we also had our second one that performed for the next 10 years. So within from year 10 to year 20, we would have accumulated cash value of about $280K in the first policy, which would end up producing about $31,000 at the end of that 20-year period. We would have borrowed over that 10-year period $45,000 every year. So we would have borrowed 45 times 10, $450,000 is the amount that would have been borrowed during that period. And as I mentioned, interest earned, the net interest earned would have been $1,700 over that 10-year period, which is about $170,000. So we borrowed for, wait a minute, $170,000. 17,000. That's wrong. Anyway, the net interest would be about 17,000. So we borrowed 450,000 and the net interest would be about 17,000. And then in policy 2, during that 10-year period from year 10 to year 20, we would have accumulated, putting in $35,000 a year, cash value of about 500,000 and net income of about 52. And it's at this point where we no longer have to worry about borrowing against our policy. And the reason we don't have to worry about borrowing at this point is because both policies are producing sufficient enough income therefore we don't have to. So at this point, not only can we pay ourselves first by putting all of our income back into our secure compound interest account, we now also have enough income being generated in that secure compound interest account that would allow us to now pay our bills. That would allow us to be able to pay that $45,000 in expenses year after year after year. And then lastly, it brought us to year 30. And this was just, if we were to continue that performance, if we were to continue taking that $45,000 in income between both policies for the next 10 years and continue still contributing to those policies, the amount of cash value in them continues to grow. And as the amount of cash value continues to grow, the amount of income that we're able to take continues to grow. So at that 30-year period, we're talking about in the first policy, about $81,000 in income compared to the second policy, which is a ridiculous $215,000 in annual income. So between these two, not only have we hit our freedom number, but 9 times out of 10 with income like that, we have now set our legacy on a course for what the next 500 years are going to look like. And in addition, we're probably on some island somewhere living a wonderful life. But
or we're bringing other people with us, right?
Right.
Hopefully anybody who is doing a strategy like this and they can see it working in their lives, which is us, jumps out there to each one teach one, right? So we do have one question before you move forward, because I know where you're going. Mm-hmm. Kelly says, you have the 10K left over, right? 1, why couldn't you just put that 10K in? So why didn't you do that? And then 2, that's not what she asked, but that's what she didn't ask. And then 2 is, what's the best vehicle to put that into so the 10K is also put to work? It's a great question.
I love that question because, again, I know I'm moving pretty fast, and I'm moving pretty fast because I am assuming majority of the people watching have already seen this. So I appreciate that question. So let's talk about it. And for that, I need to kind of just highlight it. So it's sitting right here. I've got this $50,000 that I put $5,000 into the original policy, and then I've got 45 left over. Why didn't I just put all 45 into that second policy? Like, why not? There's room. Why not? Well, there's rules to this game. And one of those rules is making sure you do have the ability to put in as much as you can. So if we were to look at, this is 10 years later. So this is a 35-year-old making $50,000 a year. We all have this thing called max insurability. That max insurability is based off our age, and actually it's a multiplier times our income that determines what that max insurability is. And for a 35-year-old, it just happens to be 35. So 35 times your income is the maximum amount of life insurance you can qualify for. That's number one. And then in addition to that, there's a maximum amount, I can't even get the word out. There's a maximum amount of that you can contribute. And that has a formula as well. That formula is the max you can contribute is approximately 40 times your income plus an additional 50% of your savings. And the thought process is this: the last thing the life insurance company, last thing that I as a fiduciary want you to do is cause yourself to become over leveraged or put yourself in a position where you can't sustain this for the rest of your life. And so therefore, that maximum amount you can contribute has to be taken into consideration. And so if we're talking about a gentleman at 35 making $50,000 in income, then what's 40% of $50,000? 40% of $50,000 is 20 grand. So 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. So that's $20,000 is the maximum in income that he can contribute. But the remaining 50, he can't contribute more than 50% of his savings. Well, I'm making the assumption that he spends what he makes. So I'm making the assumption that at age 35, his only savings is whatever's left over in that $50,000. And so if he uses 20 of it as income contribution, the remaining 30,000 is his savings. So the max he can contribute is 50% of that 30,000. So 20,000 plus 50% of 30,000 is 35 grand. So that's where the 35 grand came into play, or that's where the 35,000, or that's why I had identified it being a max of 35,000 is what he could contribute in that second policy. And so to your point, what could he have done with that remaining 10,000? And I wrote some things here because I think there's many options. There's a high yield savings, get that 10,000 compounding in a high yield savings account. I haven't heard this question yet, but when the questions start around paying back the loan, the 450,000 that he's taken over that first 10 years that was never paid back. When those questions start, what about putting that $10,000 towards paying back the loan? Or maybe even just paying the interest, even though the interest is compensated for. But still, that $10,000 can absolutely in some way, shape, or form go back into that secure compound interest account and at a minimum drive the balance on the borrowed amount down. No harm in that. So to your point, or what can you do with it? I think you have many options. And what I was just trying to also say is things happen. He has to buy a car, has to fix a roof. Want to take a vacation. So there's $10,000 that's there to be able to do whatever it is you want to do. So I'm not handcuffing him and dumping all of this money in, but I am trying to get the maximum amount or the maximum amount of growth inside of this vehicle. So a lot of words.
I just want to jump in to say we forgot to give the announcement that we have like a hard stop in about 30 minutes. So we will get as many questions as we can in, but we want to make sure we get through the information just so you guys have a heads up. And then we'll be back on Sunday. And if you guys have a bunch of questions and you just want to do Q&A on Sunday, we're totally down with that. So we need your feedback for that. Okay, yep. So go ahead.
So the only other thing that I wanted to just highlight, and I can go through them or I can just talk through them. But there was some assumptions that I had to make through this. And one of them was around income and expense changes. I had to just keep things level, meaning I'm treating this as though from age 25 to age 55, he never made another dime more than $50,000 a year. But we all know from at least 25 to 35, there may have been some promotion in there, right? And I could have added this, but I just wanted to keep things clean because it's about the concept. It's really less about the math. It's more about conceptually, do you understand the strategy? Do you understand that today we are used to spending our cash on bills and debts and then taking the rest and putting it to work? But if we were truly following the pay yourself first concept, then the idea would be, at what point are we getting to a place where we have enough leverage dollars to be able to pay our bills? And that way we can truly pay ourselves first and get everything else compounding. If you can just understand that strategy, that was the point. So I didn't want to add any other variables to confuse that. And then inflation. Inflation is a simple one. So if you notice, I got $5,000 compounding, and I allowed that secure compound interest account to compound for 10 years. Well, 10 years was 73,000, and he leveraged a portion of that 73,000 to pay his bills. Well, I could have started sooner, meaning it took 10 years to accumulate 73,000 of cash value. Why didn't I start when he had accumulated 50,000 of cash value? My main purpose was I wanted to give his money enough time to compound to compensate for inflation. So what would inflation look like? Well, sweetheart, if you slide over to the inflation calculator, I'll show you.
You're there.
So I did this earlier. Actually, I did it Sunday. We just didn't go over it. But the bottom line is, if Abel was making 45,000, and what would he need in 10 years to equate to the same 45,000? So it's 45,000 times 3%, we're talking about $60,000. So in 10 years, in order to compensate for inflation, then what Abel really and truly needed to be withdrawing starting at the 10-year period or leveraging at the 10-year period looks more like $60,000. Well, he had 63. I'm sorry, 63. He had 73 in cash value. So could he have leveraged $60,000 at that point? Absolutely he could. And then in addition, we started a second policy. So if the following year he needed to leverage another $60,000, would he have been able to? Absolutely. So I left enough room in the actions that I had taken to compensate for inflation as well. So it is absolutely very important for us to account for inflation, which is why when we walk through the steps, I kind of highlight that again in using this calculator. Hold on. All I'm doing, I'm sitting at calculator.net. And it's the forward flat rate inflation calculator is what we're using to be able to calculate that. And I'm using a flat 3%. So, yes, inflation could be higher, could be lower. I'm just using a flat 3%. But my point is these numbers in this example are compensating for all of that. And especially once you get to year 20, it's game on. Because in year 20, you've got well over $80,000 available to you in tax-free income that you're able to leverage from your policy and not even borrow. So we're talking about income being produced from the policy, and that compensates for inflation as well. So, and then the last one is market fluctuations. I did cover this one on Sunday, and I can absolutely do it again if it was lost in the sauce. But the bottom line is, as it relates to market fluctuations, I did not compensate for it inside of this vehicle because my thought process was I just wanted to get the concept out. But how do you account for market fluctuations? It's the same in every example that I've ever done since you guys have been on this channel. And that is, we have a 0% floor inside this product. And because of the money is sitting in what's called the general fund, meaning because of that 0% floor, there's a contractual guarantee that the money that you put inside of this policy can't be lost. If we run into a situation where there is a market downturn, then it's all compensated for internally and you're never experiencing it. So your dollar will never be affected. But anyway, we can get into that if there's any more questions around it. And the issue of being over leveraged. And again, this goes back to that $450,000 that we had borrowed over that first 10-year period. This dollar amount right here. I have zero plans on paying that $450,000 back. But if you noticed at that 30-year mark, I could pay it off in my sleep if I wanted to. But I have zero plans in doing so. Why? You have to remember Abel's goal. Where in Abel's goal did it say he wanted to be debt free? It didn't. Abel's goal was retire early. Abel's goal was to generate enough income so that he could have his freedom number and potentially fire his job. And so as a result, that leveraged $450,000 will be addressed, but will happen to be addressed in his death benefit. And so what that means is once Abel passes, yes, there is going to be $450,000 plus whatever interest there may be that is going to eat into his death benefit. We are knowingly and accepting of this aspect of what Abel's trying to do, because Abel has zero plans on. Abel's not concerned on what the death benefit is. Now that might be different for you though, and that's where I go back to. This is not a one size fits all. This is specific to this gentleman. Those of us who do care about legacy, then how would we address that $450,000 outstanding loan? There's a way of going about it. Because there's so much income being generated by year 30 that, again, We have the means to be able to do so. But again, it's not a one size fits all. And what we would like to do next, I guess once we get through a few questions, but what I'd like to do next is kind of walk through some of the steps that you would need to take to be able to accomplish that. So go ahead, sweetheart.
Well, it is about your goal, because Abel's goal, one thing that you didn't mention, but I did add on there, was that he doesn't want his mom to have to move in with him because she doesn't have a retirement plan. And how many people are facing that in America today, where you haven't had this conversation, and they may not have wanted to have this conversation with you, but at some point this could very well be a reality for them. And where are they going to go?
Absolutely.
Where would they go? And it's going to have to be, then they're looking at you. And now we are talking about multi-generational living, which we already know is a trend, because new builders are even building multi-generational housing. So this is definitely going to be a thing. But the reason why it's happening is because people are forced to, not because they're doing it on the front end and they're saying, we're going to do this because it puts us all in a better position in the end. It's the flip. It's
I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it.
they're flipping it. The problem is when they're then moving in together, and by then you've got all kinds of trauma and everything else that you got to throw in there. So that's a real thing for a lot of people. And so it's okay if that is your goal, that you want to be financially secure so that somebody else who is not, it does not have to become a burden to you, or that you do not have to become a burden to somebody else. And no judgment. This is just where people are. And our goal is to meet people where they are, to provide solutions or find out where your point of leverage is, right?
Right.
Kelvin does have a question, though, and it is about that loan. So I do want to add this, because I think there's a lot of people who are going to have the same question. Yeah. So you said you weren't going to pay it back, but he says, if that loan isn't paid back, how is interest charged every year?
Okay. So let's go here.
Am I loud? I feel like I'm yelling.
So as I mentioned, in year one, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I guess this would be year 11. In year 11, when you borrow $45,000 from this 73 in cash value, what's happening with your 50,000? Your 50,000 is making on average 7%. On average. So that's, sometimes it's zero, sometimes it's more, but on average 7%. And the money that you leverage, this 45,000, you're not leveraging it for free. You leveraged it at 4%. So this is the first year. So in the first year, when you borrowed that 50,000 and you paid your bills, I didn't pay back the 50,000. I'm sorry, the 45. When you borrowed the 45,000 and paid your bills, that my bills are now zeroed out. I didn't pay back the 45,000. But what happened with that interest, that 4% interest? 4% of 45,000 is 1,800. Well, if my money inside of my policy is making money and the leverage money cost me 18, the difference between the two is my net interest earned. So in year one, when I did this, do I have negative interest or do I have positive interest? I have positive, because I'm actually making money inside my policy. And I think the piece that this isn't necessarily Kelvin, but the piece that a lot of people who pay close attention to whole life policies, this is the piece that's missing. In a whole life policy, when you leverage against a whole life policy, do you make money inside the policy when you borrow from it? 9 times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100, when you borrow money out of a whole life policy, you're losing money in the policy, because it's making 4%, but it costs you 5 to leverage your money. It's making 4%, it costs you 8% to leverage your money, which means the minute you grab that $45,000, you're losing money in the policy. The minute I grab this $45,000 out of this policy, am I losing money in the policy? I'm not. Now, did I address the $45,000? I didn't. But from an interest perspective, I am still positive interest this year. Next year, the market does okay, I'm positive interest. Next year, the market does okay, I'm positive interest. The year after that, the market doesn't do okay. Okay, what happens if the market does not do okay? That's this part. I borrowed that my 50,000 was supposed to make 7%. It didn't. It made 0. But I still owed 4% on the 45,000 that I leveraged. So I owe 18. Well, when you look at the cash value, when you look at my cash value plus the leveraged dollar amount, those are $2 amounts sitting in the general fund. Okay, my 73,000, that interest that it was covered the previous years isn't covered. So, okay, I owe $1,800 to the life insurance company. Well, there's two things that occur inside of a properly designed product. These two things that occur do not occur inside of a whole life policy. So you can't do this. So inside this policy, what happens is when the life insurance company understands how compound interest works. So here's what they say: hey, we're going to defer all interest payments until you die. That's the first thing they're going to say. But then the second thing they're going to do is, hey, to keep track of things, we need to make sure that we acknowledge the interest and how much is owed. So what's going to happen is it's a ledger move. So if my cash value is 73,000 and I'm leveraging 110 from the life insurance company, and we now owe the life insurance company 1,800, we're going to move 1,800 from my side of the bucket, from my side of the general fund, over to the life insurance company side of the general fund. When I do this, the money that I just borrowed just became self-collateralized. And because I've done that, now I can borrow the same amount next year. Had I not done that, the loan would not be self-collateralized, and the life insurance company would not feel comfortable allowing me to leverage this money again. But when I do that, and again, this all happens internally, we never even noticed it. But once I do that, I have now satisfied the interest for that year. Well, when you add my cash value and the leverage cash value together, did my accumulation value change? What do I mean by accumulation value? Accumulation value is the money that's working for you that allows me to generate this cash value. So the amount of money working for me never if you add these $2 amounts together, they are the same. They equal the same amount.
And they're still in your bucket.
And they're still in my bucket. Now, I have not addressed the $450,000, just so we're clear. But from an interest perspective, how is my policy imploding? What you're showing is an outstanding loan balance. But there's not interest compounding that's eating up my policy. But if you do this inside of a whole life policy, though, you do this exact same process inside of a whole life policy, it does implode. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but this is how crazy this is. Because I hear the argument around leveraged dollars. I hear the argument around, well, how much is this going to cost me? I hear the argument around putting all my income into this where there's some risk that I might only get 7% return, or I might only get 3% or 4%. Yeah, but on average, or 10, right?
What does the data say?
Right. Okay. But what's crazy is when we bought our house, I had calculated how much we were actually paying for this house, right? So let's just say we paid $300,000 for this house, and when I calculated it, it was like $650,000, right? Was the actual price we would have paid if we would not have had other strategies, right? Mm-hmm. And I was reminded of this because there's a video shared that we had watched, and it reminded me of being in that moment and realizing that anyone who refinances their house, anyone before that 10-year mark, that 15-year mark, regardless, all they have done, all of the money that they have put in, completely threw away because it just went to interest, and you start the clock over. This is the craziest thing because people will be grateful to refinance, and it's literally renting from the bank. They still owe the same amount on this house. Right. They still have not paid a single thing. And here's the crazy part. If anything were to happen to them in the process, does the bank say, you know what, your family can keep the house? Here's some money to pay for the house. Your family can keep the house. You guys have paid in a lot of money. And so now even a portion of it might be yours. If you miss 6 months of payments, if you miss 3 months of payments, is the bank like, you know what? You've put in years of payments into this house, and you've paid us a lot of interest before you've even touched the principal, but you've done a really good job in making those payments up until this point. So we're going to give you credit at least for that part. No, they don't. They foreclose and they take the house because it's collateral. They can't do that with this. Right. They can't. You own this. They can't take it away from you. And if anything were to happen to you in the meantime, the majority of people who are using their cash flow or what's left over, especially when they're doing velocity banking, they are not thinking to themselves that, yes, I can allocate because I have all this debt. If I need as much cash flow as possible to go and attack this debt, one thing that they are not, that probably could go by the wayside is life insurance, right? Because this is a luxury in America. Right. It's not nothing that's mandatory, but this is the number one reason why people just stay in debt. One, they don't have leverage. They're leveraging other people's money, and it's other people who are making money on that leverage. And if you think for a second that this is, you're dismissing it, you're not willing to watch till the end, then I encourage you to question why and ask yourself why. Because if this is already super uncomfortable for you, but you can easily adopt the concept of an amortized mortgage, right? Or the concept of just loans in general or financing something in general, where if something were to happen to you, all of that's wasted. If something were to happen to you, maybe your family would even have to pay it back, right? If something were to happen to you. Anyway, I just encourage you to question why this feels uncomfortable for you, because really it's not your fault. So and the other part is, by staying here and asking questions, you're not wasting our time. By leaving though, it's not our time that you're wasting by not learning and implementing strategies to accelerate wealth creation and debt reduction, right? It's yours, and I hate that for you. So I just want to say that, and also I know we have little time, so
I want to, just because it's happened to be sitting in my face, I'll throw this question up here as well.
Okay.
10% is a maximum or a minimum amount of contribution starting a secure compound interest account, and it's different for everyone. But the rule of thumb that we use, or the rule of thumb that I use, is 10 times your age every month being the minimum. So if you're 45 years old, 10 times 45, that's $450 a month being the bare minimum. The idea is you want to be able to at least compensate for the cost of insurance and the fees associated with the policy. So we at least want to be able to build up enough wealth inside of the secure compound interest account for you to be able to pay for and compensate for those things. Now, here's the truth. If you're, I'll call it my age and up, 10 times your age every month is not sufficient. Got to be realistic, because we don't have as many compound cycles left. But if you're 21, 22, in your early 20s, 10 times your age is absolutely sufficient to get started. Now, that maximum is depending on your age, where you are. It's a multiplier times the income that you make. So good question. I think the only other thing that I wanted to cover, if there aren't any other questions, or if there, if you have questions, we can absolutely answer them.
Yeah, no, keep going.
But the only other thing I wanted to cover was how do we go about this? And so give me a minute to get there, but got a long ways to ride here. Make it smaller. There we go. So what does this look like for you as the individual? Again, my whole objective for today was, it's about the concept of how to kind of reverse what we've been doing. And that is, again, identifying your cash flow by your income coming in, paying your bills, paying your debts, and whatever's left over, now getting that money compounding to be able to build income, versus truly paying yourself first. How do we kind of put ourselves in position to, if we're looking for whatever that FIRE number is, or the wealth number, or freedom number, or whatever it is you want to call it, what are some of those steps that you can do? And again, this is a little bit different than maybe what you're used to. Step one, always for me, step one is the goal, because this is unique. This is specific to you. Maybe your goal is legacy. Maybe you need a certain amount of life insurance based off your age, so it's specific to you. Maybe your goal isn't, maybe actually paying off your home is a part of that goal. That's okay. So it's identifying what that specific goal is. And then it's the wealth equation. It's identifying, it's paying yourself first, starting today in a secure vehicle, getting that money compounding, and then leveraging those dollars to be able to pay your expenses. And then identifying what is that time required for you to be able to hit that goal. Then you leverage that accumulated amount, and again, put that money to work. Again, the concept of paying yourself first, putting all of your income into this vehicle to be able to produce wealth, and then it's rinse and repeat. So what does that look like? So as we talk about kind of identifying the goal, it's well, I guess that's not very large.
Oh, you know what we could do? We could do
Full viewport.
yeah. We could do that.
I'll do it. Come on, get there. There we go.
Hey,
Took me a minute.
that's better, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the thought process there is regardless of what your goal is, because again, this is specific to individuals, and then we run into the no different than velocity banking. It's identifying your income, your expenses, and this is critical. And I kind of highlighted where to go for that, but it's identifying what does that dollar amount look like in the future. And also, this is the other part, is how much time do we have? I was talking with a gentleman today in his early 60s, and he was wanting to get a secure compound interest account. And my first question is, how long are we talking? How long do you plan on funding this this vehicle so that you can start to be able to produce that income? And it was 5 years. 5 years just isn't enough. It isn't enough. Being honest, it's just not enough time in a vehicle like this because it grows slowly. Now, once you give your money enough time, it absolutely can do some amazing things. So the time horizon truly matters. And then from there, there's two different approaches, right? There's the traditional way, and then there's what we're calling the reverse velocity banking way. And that is your income and expenses adjusted for inflation, understanding what that is. And then once you understand that number, it's identifying the vehicle that you're going to use to allow you to help hit that number once you take a percentage of that and put that money away. And then, or it's the income that you have today multiplied by at least 25 years. And why 25 years? Because this is all based on around the 4% rule. And so
Yeah,
because it's based
doesn't
around
work.
the 4% rule, that's the whole thought process around giving yourself 25 years, multiply whatever that income dollar amount over that 25-year period is, and then divided by 4% will tell you what that monthly or annual amount would be.
Oh wait, go. Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. No,
you
I was
tell
going
me.
to say the whole point of this was that the traditional way is that you have this number multiplied by 25 years. Now that's your freedom number. You have to achieve that number before you can retire. So for most people, it's going to be if realistically, not doing this, but realistically, if you're going to wait until you have that amount, you're looking at over $1 million for sure. Like hard, just over $1 million. That's what it's going to be. However, doing it this way, what you're looking for is the income that it's producing, knowing that it's going to continue to grow and knowing that you already have the leverage and the coverage, right? So therefore, you're not waiting until that you hit this gigantic number. Now you're hitting a different number, and so therefore it's much more attainable.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to make that difference though, because I think most people are going, well, when can I retire? Well, if you have to pregame like Abel did with $5,000 a year, then you're going to have to, that's why I'm calling pregame. He has to like do these baby steps in order to get to a place where he has leverage that he can now accelerate this plan, right? But if you're coming in and you're able to start at Abel's step 2, then you would be looking at 10 years. Right? You would be looking at a significantly less amount of time.
To kind of, I think, to restate what you stated, I have an example where I've got a client who they moved from California to Tennessee. So that alone was a cost of living increase. And then in addition, in California, they were living off one salary, his. But when they moved to Tennessee, the kids were finally at school age. And so they gave them an opportunity to actually introduce another income. And his wife was making just about as much as he was. And so what that ultimately did was it allowed them to jumpstart this process for them, because if they continue living off his one income, and his wife take all of his wife's income and put it into a secure compound interest producing vehicle, how fast would it take for them to be able to leverage that cash value to be able to pay their bills? Like it definitely doesn't take as long as it would if it was just him and taking a portion of a percentage of his income and dumping it into a vehicle like this. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Man, I love our community so much. Like some of these comments and questions, when light bulbs start going off and you guys start getting creative and you're making these connections on your own, like that fills me up.
So the next step would be, okay, what is your current income? And of your current income, because we have to start somewhere. This is that pregame that you were talking about. Of your income, how much of your income can you get compounding? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Is it 30? Well, how much can you get compounding? And then the remaining, okay, it goes towards your expenses, bills. It's what you're living off. It's your cost of living. It's everything associated. But what is that? Based off what that is, then we take this dollar amount and we put it to work. Come on. And then we put it to work. So where do we put it? We put it into some secure compound interest account that does not involve risk. Now, eliminating risk is next to impossible. But can you reduce the risk? Can you get to a point where the risk is not impacting your ability to grow your account? How many vehicles do you know that you can put your money in? You're not concerned about who's the president, whether or not Elon Musk did or said something stupid. Like,
Yeah.
explain, what are those vehicles? I think there are pockets of real estate that fit in this category. The other, to me, is a secure compound interest account. And I can almost throw 100% match 401k as long as that 100% match 401k is not tied to the market. But if it's tied to the market, I can't even throw that in there. So it's taking that dollar amount, getting it compounding, and you have to establish or accumulate enough cash value inside that vehicle that's at, I'm saying, 2 times your income. So if you make
Current
50,000,
income, yeah.
what'd you say?
Your current income.
Yeah, current income. So what I'm saying is, can the accumulation value inside that vehicle equal or exceed 2 times your current income? So if you make $150,000 a year, I'm saying that your secure compound interest account has a cash value of double that. Again, this is different for everyone. We are all in different places. So that's kind of the perspective that I have on this item. So in step 3, once we achieve that space, we are able to then leverage that cash value inside that secure compound interest producing vehicle for a certain period of time. What is that certain period of time? It's the amount of time it takes for the secure compound interest account itself to start producing income. So we're going to leverage it for, and in Abel's case, we leveraged that we started with 73,000 in cash value, and we leveraged that cash value for the next 10 years, accumulating 450,000 of unpaid loans. Yes. Now, the interest is compensated for, but there is still $450,000 sitting out there of unpaid loan debt. So the question is, how long can you leverage that money? Well, you leverage it until the vehicle itself can produce the income. The vehicle itself can compensate for whatever that annual income is that you're having. And
So
then
how would
once,
they do that? Because I want them to be able to do this today.
so what do you mean? How do they do that? It's use the calculator.
Yeah. Can you show them? Just if you've opted in, we have free resources and we'll send you the link to the calculator. So if you already have, you have it in your email for sure. If you haven't, we're going to put it up here in just a second so you can grab it.
So from Abel's perspective, he was 35. He started this second secure compound interest account at age 35. And at what point in the secure compound interest account, between the first one that he started and the second one that he started, at what point does he have enough accumulated enough income being generated in that vehicle to replace his income? Well, this is showing from 35 to 45. So this is showing 10 years inside of the vehicle. So putting away the majority of his income, $35,000, majority of his income inside this vehicle by age 45, we're talking 52,000 tax-free for the rest of his life. Is that enough? Now, again, I was doing all planes being equal, meaning I know at age 45, he's going to need more than at age 45, he's going to need more than $45,000 a year. So I understand that. But my point is, by age 45, he has the ability to take 52,000 out of this secure compound interest account, and then he has the second one. The second one, which would be by age 45. So let me get there, 45. So this one he's had for 2 years. I'm sorry, 20 years. 20 years. So the first one was $52,000. The second one is $31,000. That's $83,000 in tax-free income that he's able to take from this vehicle. So whether he needed $45,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, whatever you want to say as it relates to inflation, there's enough income available between these two vehicles to be able to compensate for that. And so, again, using the calculator, whether you're using this calculator or using the inflation calculator or using the Vanguard calculator, if you're doing this through the traditional method, use the calculator to kind of determine what is that time frame for you to be able to then hit your goal.
Okay, well, that's the exercise that is the takeaway for today, is how to find your freedom number and how to calculate what those years are. Because we have limited amount of time today, as we said, we would love to be able to take the questions because I'm sure you guys have a ton of questions, but here's what you can do. You can put your questions when we're done, if you're kind of going back to rewatch parts, put them in the comments and we will be sure to address them on the next slide. Show up on Sunday because I think this is probably going to warrant a Q&A, a heavy Q&A session on Sunday, which would be completely great. Show up on Sunday. We're doing it earlier time now, so it seems like that worked out for a lot of people, and I love that. I think some people probably just forgot. So I hope this time works out for you guys. We will be back on Sunday for sure to answer all of your questions.
Yep. No agenda, purely questions. Please come prepared. You can go as in-depth as you want. You can pull out the buckets and do the math. Sorry.
And if you have a particular request, like Miko and Kellen were in the chat and they were like, could you show an example of somebody using their home equity? They're leveraging another tool to be able to front load or get this started and moving faster. Yeah. Absolutely. So any requests like that, put them in. We've got a couple days to put those together so we could be more prepared with all, the framework for those examples. And we would love to do that for you. Anything else do you want to add in there?
No, sweetheart. I think we're good.
Okay. Well, we like to close with, if you didn't come from a wealthy family,
you can make sure a wealthy family comes from you.
So stay focused.
Stay protected.
Stay tuned.
Stay connected.
I'm Angelique.
And I'm Donnell.
And our goal is to help you
get self-directed.
And we have those free resources where you get access to the calculator. I'm going to put those up in just a minute, guys. We'll see you Sunday. Thanks for watching. Hey, before you go, we want to remind you that becoming fully self-directed means gaining complete control over your wealth, time, and freedom. It's not just an idea. It's a framework, a mindset, and the power to make informed decisions to secure your future. Being here means you're taking those steps, and we want to thank you for allowing us to guide you. We believe that we grow farther and faster when we grow together. So tune in next time and tell a friend to tell a friend. We've helped thousands of people just like you start their journey to financial freedom. And if they can do it, you can too. And if you're ready to learn more, we got you. Get a head start by grabbing these 2 free books. But how do they get them, Donnell?
Head over to my website where you'll have access to a few things. A ton of free resources, case studies, and over 100 5-star reviews from people just like you. And in 15 minutes, we can explore what's possible for you. So don't wait.
Invest in what you want, when you want.
But first, let us help you get
self-directed.